Imagine buildings not just as static structures, but as dynamic participants in this huge cycle rising, serving their purpose, and then eventually, thoughtfully being decommissioned. You see the cranes go up, right? The structures take shape, and then sometimes decades later, you see them come down. But what actually happens to all that material once a project wracks up? Where does it all go? It's a question with some really profound implications, I think, not just for our planet, but, well, for our communities and our economy, too. And it's exactly what we're taking a deep dive into today. So today, we're zeroing in on LED V5, specifically how this leading green building certification tackles what's known as construction and demolition waste, C&D waste. Our mission really is to unpack its pretty rigorous requirements, understand the compelling why behind the guidelines, and discover how it's actively shaping a more sustainable, equitable, and economically vibrant future for our built environment.
Yeah, and this really isn't just about, managing what we might normally label as trash. It's much bigger than that. It's about catalyzing a whole systemic shift in how we fundamentally value and utilize building materials, right from their initial extraction and manufacturing all the way through to their end of life. It's a truly critical, multifaceted piece of the whole sustainability puzzle. It touches on so many aspects of our shared future and, well, the resources we consume.
We've been poring over the specifics of the LED5 construction and demolition waste diversion document, really sifting through the details, trying to bring you the most important nuggets of knowledge straight from the source. It's dense, but incredibly insightful stuff. Now, before we really dig into this crucial topic, if you're as fascinated by these insights into sustainable practices and how we can build a greener, more responsible future as we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss our future deep dives into this constantly evolving world. All right, let's kick things off then before we get into the nuts and bolts of the actual requirements, the calculations and all that. I think it's absolutely vital to understand the foundational philosophy, the why behind LED V5's intense focus on C&D waste. What's the deeper, more comprehensive intent here? It's got to be more than just reduce waste, right?
You're spot on. And what's truly fascinating here is how incredibly comprehensive the intent actually is. It extends far beyond just, shrinking landfill volumes. The document outlines this dual explicit focus. It's not only about reducing waste disposed of in landfills, but also about dramatically cutting down waste sent to incineration facilities.
Okay, so it's tackling both ends, landfilling and burning.
Exactly. And that dual objective is a really critical distinction because both pathways, while obviously different, carry significant environmental and, frankly, public health risks that LEV5 is strategically aiming to mitigate. Let's maybe think about landfills first. While the immediate concern for many might just be the physical space they take up, the environmental consequences are, well, they're far more insidious, really.
Right, it's not just about running out of room.
Not at all. Landfills are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane.
Methane, okay. The really potent one.
The really potent one, yeah. Far more impactful in the short term than CO2. And it's produced as organic materials, think wood, paper, even food scraps mixed and sometimes decompose in those oxygen-starved anaerobic conditions inside the landfill. And beyond that, there's the ever-present risk of leachate.
Leachate. That
Yeah.
sort of toxic sludge.
Pretty much, it's that toxic liquid formed when rainwater or other liquids filter through all the compacted waste, picking up all sorts of contaminants along the way. If it's not properly contained and treated, and that's a big if, sometimes leachate can seep into the ground and contaminate our soil and groundwater systems, posing some really long-term ecological and health threats.
Okay, so that covers the landfill side. But then you mentioned incineration. I think for a lot of people, the idea of burning waste, especially if it generates energy, waste to energy might seem like a more efficient, maybe even a cleaner solution than just burying it. But you're suggesting LED V5 sees it differently. What are the specific concerns there?
You're right, it is a common perception. But the reality with C&D waste incineration is it's far more complex. While it definitely reduces waste volume significantly and sometimes generates energy, it comes with its own very serious set of environmental and public health concerns.
Like what specifically?
Well, burning C&D waste isn't like burning clean wood, It's a heterogeneous mix. It contains plastics, treated wood, metals, insulation, all sorts. And burning that mix can release a really complex cocktail of air pollutants.
Okay.
We're talking about particulate matter, which is terrible for respiratory issues, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, they contribute to acid rain and smog. Heavy metals like lead and mercury can be released too.
Wow.
But perhaps most concerning are the potential releases of dioxins and furans.
Right, I've heard of those. Nasty stuff.
Extremely nasty stuff. They're highly toxic chemicals, persistent organic pollutants that can accumulate in the environment, in our food chain, in our bodies, and they're linked to cancer and developmental issues. So while that energy recovery sounds beneficial on the surface, the trade-off in air quality and public health impact is something LEED BD+C very actively seeks to avoid. Therefore, by really robustly diverting waste from both these fates, landfilling and incineration, we're achieving this multi-layered benefit.
Makes sense.
We're not just preventing disposal, we're also drastically reducing the demand for new virgin materials. I mean, think about it. Every single time we reuse a brick or recycle a steel beam, we're avoiding all the energy, the water, the raw materials needed to extract and manufacture new ones from scratch.
Right, the whole upstream impact.
Exactly. And this, in turn, cuts down significantly on their embodied carbon footprint.
Which is the total greenhouse gas emissions tied to a material's whole life.
Precisely. From raw material, extraction, processing, manufacturing, transport, right through to installation. So it's a truly holistic approach to environmental protection. It's looking at the entire material flow.
That makes the environmental case incredibly clear. Powerful stuff. But what really jumped out at me in the source document, and where this conversation gets even more layered, I think, is the explicit mention of delaying the need for new landfill facilities that are often located in frontline communities. This adds such a potent social justice dimension to waste management, something we didn't always hear discussed so directly in, green building certifications.
You've absolutely hit on a crucial point there, and it's one that truly elevates this credit beyond just purely technical specifications. When we connect this to the bigger picture of environmental justice, well, waste management infrastructure, whether it's landfills, incinerators, even those large-scale transfer stations, has historically and, systematically been cited in what are known as frontline communities.
Which are
Typically low-income communities or communities of color, those who, through various complex socioeconomic and political factors, bear a disproportionate share of environmental burdens.
Right.
This means they experience higher rates of air pollution, potential water contamination, increased truck traffic, noise, odor, and all the associated health issues that come with living right next to these facilities. So this intent statement from LED5 is, I think, a profound acknowledgement. It recognizes that sustainable building isn't just about the ecological footprint of a single project. It's fundamentally about ensuring equitable living conditions for all people.
Wow. So it's embedding ethics right into the technical side.
Exactly. It's an ethical consideration deeply embedded within the technical requirements. It recognizes that environmental justice is an inextricable part of true sustainability. It really broadens the very definition of sustainability beyond just ecological or economic concerns. It forces us to ask not just, is this good for the planet, but also, and just as importantly, is this fair to all people, especially those who have historically been marginalized?
That feels like a significant step.
It is. It's a significant step forward, holding projects accountable for their societal impact, not just their green credentials on paper. It shows LED really pushing the envelope of what green truly means.
So, okay, we've talked about protecting the environment, ensuring social equity, and the document's intent also highlights creating green jobs and fostering materials markets for building construction services. This really rounds out the picture, doesn't it? Suggesting that managing waste isn't just about preventing harm, but actually actively creating economic value. How does C&D waste diversion do that?
Exactly right. And this is where the economic benefits of, really robust waste diversion become incredibly tangible. By actively diverting materials away from landfills and incinerators, we're not just reducing environmental harm. We're stimulating an entire economy built around reuse, recycling, and reprocessing.
Ah, okay. So it's creating new types of businesses, new markets.
Precisely. This isn't just preventing waste, it's creating value out of what was once considered refuse. It's turning a potential cost disposal fees into an asset, or at least a significantly reduced cost. Think about the whole intricate chain of activities that either emerge or strengthen through this approach. Materials need to be carefully deconstructed, right? Not just smashed down with a wrecking ball. That requires skill, precision, labor to preserve the integrity of components.
Right, like careful dismantling.
Exactly. Then, these recovered materials must be sorted, cleaned, maybe processed, and often transported to new markets or facilities. All these activities generate jobs across multiple sectors, and crucially, these are often local jobs.
What kind of jobs specifically?
Well, we're talking about deconstruction specialists, people trained to carefully take buildings apart to recover valuable materials like old-growth timber or unique architectural features. There are material sorters working at dedicated recycling and processing facilities, logistics coordinators managing the flow of these recovered materials, and even innovators and manufacturers who are designing and producing new building products using recycled content. Think recycled aggregate in concrete or insulation made from recycled fibers. For instance, a really strong C&D diversion program in a city might lead to a local business popping up that specializes in refurbishing salvaged doors and windows.
I see.
Or maybe a company that converts waste gypsum drywall, which is a huge part of C&D waste, into a soil amendment product for local agriculture.
Yeah, that's clever.
It is. And these aren't just any jobs. They are green jobs, contributing directly to a more sustainable, circular economy. It's a tangible benefit to the local economy. It fosters innovation, creates new businesses, and builds resilience in local supply chains by reducing reliance on often distant, virgin material sources.
So it's a compelling case for sustainability being a driver of economic growth, not just a cost.
Absolutely. It reframes the whole equation.
Okay, so with such impactful intentions really spanning environment, social equity, and economics, how does LEED BD+C actually translate these broad goals into, actionable guidance for projects on the ground? Where does a project team actually begin when a new construction or demolition effort kicks off? It can't just be a wish list, surely.
No, you're absolutely right. Ambition definitely needs a concrete plan. And for projects, the foundational step, really the cornerstone of any successful C&D waste diversion effort, is to develop and implement a comprehensive construction and demolition materials management plan, usually called an MMP.
An MMP.
And this isn't just, an afterthought or some document you draft halfway through when the dumpsters are already overflowing. It's designed to be a proactive, strategic blueprint. It outlines precisely how a project will handle all its materials and waste streams, right from the very initial planning stages through to project completion. A truly robust MMP goes way beyond just listing the waste streams you think you'll have.
So what does it involve then?
It involves meticulous pre-planning, identifying all potential materials that will be generated: concrete, asphalt, metals, clean wood, dirty wood, drywall, insulation, roofing, carpet, everything. Then it details specific diversion goals for each of those material types. It identifies potential outlets. Where will this stuff actually go? Is there an architectural salvage yard nearby? A metal recycler? A verified mixed C&D facility?
Right, finding the end markets.
Exactly, and establishing clear contracts or agreements with those vendors before the waste starts piling up. Crucially, it assigns specific responsibilities. Who on the project team is responsible for ensuring the on-site sorting happens correctly? Who tracks the collection? Who gets the weight tickets? Accountability is key.
So everyone knows their role?
Everyone knows their role. Think of it as a detailed operational manual just for waste. A really good MMP might even include something like a materials flow diagram to visually track how each waste stream is supposed to move from its point of generation to its final diverted destination. It should also consider contingency plans. What happens if you find more asbestos than expected, or if the market for recycled wood suddenly disappears?
Yeah, things change on projects.
They absolutely do. And without this level of detail and proactive planning, even the best intentions for diversion can just fall apart on a busy, dynamic construction site. It's really about integrating waste management into the project's very DNA, making it as important as scheduling or budgeting from day one. This foresight is what allows teams to maybe design for deconstruction or procure materials with their end of life already in mind and establish those critical relationships with recycling and reuse centers well in advance. It avoids that reactive scramble later on.
Okay, so once that meticulous plan, the MMP, is in place and hopefully being followed, the ultimate goal and how success is actually measured comes down to diversion. How do they actually quantify this? How do project teams know if they've met the target set in their MMP and by LEED BD+C?
Yeah, the measurement is key. The source is very clear on this. A final waste management report must be provided at the end of the project. This report basically acts as the project's comprehensive ledger for waste. It meticulously details all waste generated throughout the project, what was disposed of, landfilled or incinerated, and critically, what was diverted.
And how do they measure it? Weight? Volume?
The calculations for diversion can be done either by weight or by volume. Both are acceptable methods. However, and this is the absolutely critical requirement for data integrity you have to maintain consistency throughout the entire project.
Ah, okay, so pick one and stick with it.
Exactly. If you choose to start tracking demolition debris by weight, you must continue to track all materials, excavation, soil if included, framing waste, interior finishes, everything by weight for all phases of the project. You can't switch midstream.
Why is that so important?
Well, consistency is just paramount for accurate reporting and perhaps even more importantly, for verification and auditability later on. Without it, the data can be easily skewed or made completely incomparable. Imagine trying to calculate a percentage if you tracked wood by weight in tons, but concrete by volume in cubic yards.
Yeah, wouldn't work. Apples and oranges.
Exactly. It would be an apples to oranges comparison, making it impossible to genuinely assess the project's performance against its goals, or even compare it reliably to other projects. So, consistency removes ambiguity, ensures the data is reliable, and makes the whole process transparent for both the project team and the certifying body, USGBC. It's really a fundamental principle for accurate environmental accounting.
That makes perfect sense. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the actual act of diversion, the how, what are the primary methods or practical strategies that LEED-BD+C specifically champions and encourages projects to use? You mentioned they're not all weighted equally.
That's right. AEDV5 outlines several key strategies, and understanding them is crucial because, as you say, they're not all treated the same in the credit calculation. These strategies really represent a spectrum of effort and, ultimately, environmental impact. First, maybe the gold standard in some ways, is off-site salvage.
Salvage, so taking things out to be reused.
Exactly. This refers to materials carefully removed from the construction or demolition site, specifically with the intent of being reused elsewhere. Often in another building project or sold by an architectural salvage company, maybe even donated to a community rebuilding nonprofit. Think of valuable old-growth timber beams, antique bricks, historic windows, unique architectural features, things that still possess significant structural integrity or aesthetic value.
Right, things too good to crush.
Precisely. The key here is reuse in their original or near original form, rather than just breaking them down for reprocessing. Secondly, there's source separation for single material recycling.
Okay, separating things on site.
Yes. This is a highly effective and generally preferred method where specific individual materials like clean, uncontaminated wood, different types of metals, steel, copper, aluminum, cardboard, clean concrete rubble without rebar, or even uncontaminated gypsum drywall are kept strictly separate right there at the job site. This usually means having dedicated, clearly labeled bins or piles for each material.
Which takes discipline.
It takes discipline, absolutely, but the benefit is huge. These clean, segregated streams can be sent to specialized recycling facilities that are optimized to process that specific material into new raw materials or products. This minimizes contamination and maximizes the value and quality of the recycled output. Next up, we have mixed C&D recycling.
So throwing it all in one bin and hoping for the best.
Well, not quite hoping for the best, but yes, collecting commingled waste, a mix of different C&D materials, and sending it off to a centralized processing facility. These facilities then use a combination of manual labor, magnets, screens, air classifiers, sometimes even optical sorters, to separate, clean, and process the various materials for recycling.
Okay, so it can work, but it depends on the facility.
Exactly. It can often be logistically easier on site, maybe requires fewer separate bins, but the efficiency and the actual diversion rate achieved by sorting at these facilities can vary widely. Which is why, as we'll see, LEED-BD+C has very specific rules about how you count the diversion from these places. And finally, the fourth key strategy is using industry manufacturer take-back programs.
Sending stuff back to the maker.
Essentially, yes. These are often specialized programs where specific materials, especially maybe complex ones or brand-specific components or things with unique recycling needs, are sent back directly to the original manufacturer or a dedicated industry-run program. Examples might include certain types of carpet tiles, some ceiling tiles, specific roofing membranes, maybe even certain chemical containers if managed properly.
Why do that instead of regular recycling?
Because the manufacturer is often the best equipped to recover value from their own products. They know the composition, they might have processes to reuse components or reincorporate the materials cleanly into new products, effectively closing the loop within their own supply chain. So yeah, these strategies represent different levels of effort, different logistics, and importantly, different environmental impacts. And Levy V5's credit structure definitely nudges projects towards the higher impact options, which becomes really clear when we look at the credit calculations themselves.
That distinction between the strategies is really helpful. And yeah, this brings us to a part that can often feel a bit like the nitty-gritty, the details, but it's absolutely where the rubber meets the road for project teams trying to maximize their impact and, frankly, earn those LV points. You said not all diverted material is treated equally in the calculation, which is fascinating. What really stands out to you here regarding how Levy assigns value?
Yeah, what truly stands out and what project teams absolutely need to grasp to succeed with this credit is the clear hierarchy of value that LEED V5 assigns to these different diversion strategies. The credit is meticulously designed, really, to incentivize the most impactful forms of waste reduction first and foremost. The source clearly defines what's considered 100% diverted for credit calculation purposes. These are essentially the gold standard methods, where the material has a very, very high probability of maintaining its value or being cleanly reprocessed into something useful.
Okay, so what qualifies for that 100% value?
These 100% diverted methods include recovered materials sent to a dedicated single material recycler, like that source-separated wood or metal we talked about, recovered materials sent for off-site salvage reuse, and materials sent to a qualifying manufacturer or industry take-back program.
So basically the salvage, the clean source separated stuff, and the manufacturer returns.
Exactly. These methods are prioritized because they drastically minimize contamination. They maximize the likelihood of those materials being reprocessed into high-value products, or, even better, reused directly. They really represent the ideal circular flow, where materials maintain their highest possible value and utility.
Right, because the cleaner the stream, the better the outcome.
Precisely. When you source separate materials, a recycler gets a much cleaner, more uniform feedstock. That's not just easier for them to process, it's often less energy intensive, and it leads to higher quality recycled content, which can then be incorporated into new, durable building products.
Right.
This directly reduces the need for virgin resources and the energy tied to new manufacturing. So yeah, highly efficient, highly effective strategies.
But then there's that truly special category you hinted at, salvaged materials that are recovered and sent off-site specifically for reuse. These get a massive 200% diversion rate, double value. Why such a significant incentive? What's the profound thinking behind that multiplier? It seems huge.
It is huge. And this 200% multiplier really raises that important question about the fundamental hierarchy of waste management. You know the mantra, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Right. Reuse is better than recycle.
Reuse is significantly better than recycle, environmentally speaking. And salvaged materials, specifically those recovered and sent off-site for direct reuse in another project, are considered the absolute pinnacle of this hierarchy within the C&D context. So LEED 5 reflects that supreme value by giving them a 200% diversion rate in the calculation. It essentially doubles their positive impact when you're tallying up your points.
But why double? What's the justification?
The reason for this significant multiplier is, well, it's profoundly strategic. It's economic, not just environmental. Reusing an item in its original form saves all the energy, water, and raw materials associated with both the demolition phase, if it were just crushed or landfilled, and critically, the entire manufacturing process of a new product that would have otherwise been needed to replace it.
Ah, okay, so it saves on both ends disposal and new production.
Exactly. Consider salvaging, say, a beautiful old-growth timber beam or hundreds of antique bricks, maybe a unique set of architectural doors from a deconstructed building. If those materials are then incorporated directly into a new project or used to repair another existing structure, you've completely avoided the energy and pollution from mining new ore or harvesting new timber or firing new bricks. You've avoided the energy for processing and manufacturing those new items and the transportation impacts. It's a massive saving. So this 200% isn't just about rewarding resource conservation, though it does that. It's also a profound market signal from LA.
How so?
It actively incentivizes careful deconstruction over destructive demolition. It creates a real economic reason to employ skilled labor to carefully dismantle buildings, rather than just tearing them down with heavy machinery as fast as possible.
So it makes saving materials potentially more profitable, or at least less costly.
Precisely. It's not just about saving a beam, it's about valuing craftsmanship, maybe preserving architectural history, and crucially making the economics of debuilding more attractive and financially viable compared to traditional demolition. It's a really strategic move to shift the entire industry's mindset, moving away from a linear dispose model towards an asset recovery model. It helps foster a much more robust market for reclaimed building materials.
That's smart. It pushes teams to really look for that inherent value in existing structures before they just become rubble.
Exactly. Find the value first.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Valuing direct reuse so highly because of its systemic impact, it's a powerful incentive. But realistically, on many sites, especially maybe larger ones, achieving full source separation for every single material stream isn't always feasible, right? Or at least it's a significant logistical challenge. So what happens with those commingled waste streams, the mixed C&D stuff that goes to a sorting facility? How does the LEV5 account for the realities of that? Are there special rules or caveats there?
Yeah, you're hitting on a very practical and extremely common scenario on many, many construction sites. And yes, there are very specific and quite important rules for those mixed C&D materials sent off to a processing facility. The source clearly states that for these commingled streams, where various materials are collected together in a single dumpster or container, you must use the processing facility's average recycling rate when calculating your project's diversion.
Okay, so you ask the facility what their rate is.
You ask the facility, yes. This is crucial for accuracy and accountability. You need their documented rate. However, and here's the crucial caveat, the real kicker, and it's one that can often catch project teams unaware if they haven't checked. If that facility's claimed recycling rate isn't verified by a third party, meaning an independent qualified auditor hasn't come in and confirmed the facility's actual processing capabilities and diversion performance, then your project has to assume a maximum default rate of only 35% diversion for all materials sent to that facility, regardless of what the facility might claim.
Wow, only 35%, even if they say they recycle 80%.
Even if they claim 80%, 90%, whatever, if they cannot provide credible, recent third-party verification documentation to back up that claim, LED says you can only count 35% of the material weight or volume sent there towards your credit calculation.
That's a huge difference. Why is such a strict rule?
Well, this rule serves several really critical purposes. Firstly, it strongly promotes transparency in the waste industry. It encourages project teams to partner with reputable, high-performing facilities that are willing to undergo independent verification. This builds trust in the entire waste management chain. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, it acts as a powerful deterrent against potential greenwashing.
Facilities just making up high numbers.
Exactly, where facilities might overstate their capabilities or misrepresent their actual diversion rates just to attract business from LEED projects. By setting this conservative, quite low default rate for unverified facilities, LEED V5 ensures that actual proven performance, rather than just claimed performance, is what counts in the certification process.
Right, it demands proof.
It demands proof. It pushes the entire C&D processing industry towards greater honesty, towards verifiable performance metrics, and ultimately towards investing in better sorting technology and processes to achieve real high diversion rates. It really holds everyone accountable, from the construction site choosing the hauler to the processing plant doing the sorting.
Okay, so we know what counts 100%, what counts double at 200%, and how mixed C&D is handled with that verification requirement. Just as important, then, is knowing what doesn't count at all when you're trying to achieve these diversion goals, right? Are there any materials or destinations that are explicitly defined as 0% diverted, things that send a really strong signal about LEV5's priorities?
Absolutely. The source is exceptionally clear on this, and these exclusions send a very, very strong signal about what LEV5 considers acceptable or truly beneficial forms of diversion. It clarifies what isn't considered recycling or reuse. Firstly, materials destined for alternative daily cover, ADC, are explicitly considered 0% diverted.
Okay, remind me what ADC is again.
ADC, alternative daily cover. It's essentially using certain C&D materials, often things like shredded drywall, ground up wood, sometimes auto shredder fluff, or even contaminated soil as a cover layer over the fresh municipal solid waste in landfills at the end of each operating day.
Why do they do that?
It helps with things like controlling odors, managing wind-blown litter, preventing pests, and improving stability. So it serves a function within the landfill operation. But, and this is the key point, while it technically uses the C&D material, it is emphatically not a form of recycling or reuse. It's simply a landfill management practice.
So it's still ending up in the landfill, just used differently.
Precisely. It's still disposal. LED V5 makes it abundantly clear that this counts as 0% towards diversion. Similarly, and this is another crucial distinction we touched on earlier, materials destined for incineration or energy recovery are also considered 0% diverted.
Even if they generate electricity,
Right.
waste to energy.
Even if they generate energy. This is a significant stance because, as we discussed, for some, incineration with energy recovery might seem like a beneficial way to handle waste, reduces volume, produces power. However, for LEEV5, the significant environmental impacts associated with burning C&D waste, particularly that complex cocktail of air pollutants we talked about, the heavy metals, the potential for highly toxic dioxin and furan emissions, are deemed to often outweigh the perceived benefits of energy generation.
So the environmental downsides are too high.
That's the clear message here. By designating these methods as 0% diverted, LEBV5 strongly emphasizes that true diversion, in their definition for this credit, means keeping materials out of the ground and out of the air via burning. It prioritizes higher value, lower impact outcomes like direct reuse and clean, efficient recycling.
Got it. It's a very intentional exclusion, reflecting a precautionary approach.
Exactly, a precautionary principle against known environmental and health risks associated with C&D incineration.
That's a very strong message, making it clear that just using something as landfill cover or burning it isn't what Rees-Lee considers true diversion for points. Okay, so besides ADC and incineration being zero, are there any materials or types of waste that are just excluded from these specific calculations entirely? Maybe because they're handled under other credits or managed differently by regulations?
Yes, that's a good question. There are a few key exclusions from these specific C&D waste diversion calculations. Understanding them helps clarify the precise scope of this particular credit and prevents any confusion or potential double counting with other sustainability efforts on a project. Firstly, hazardous waste is explicitly excluded from these calculations.
Makes sense. That's a whole different ballgame.
Entirely different. Hazardous materials like asbestos-containing materials, lead-based paint, certain chemical residues, or heavily contaminated soils, these are handled under completely different, much stricter regulatory frameworks due to their significant health and environmental risks. They require specialized handling, transport, disposal, and documentation protocols that are entirely separate from managing general non-hazardous C&D waste. So this credit focuses squarely on the non-hazardous building material streams. Secondly, and this is an important nuance for project teams trying to maximize points across the board, on-site reuse is also excluded from this specific credits calculations.
Wait, reusing materials on the same site doesn't count here? That seems odd. Isn't reuse good?
Reuse is absolutely good. In fact, reusing materials directly on the same site where they were generated is an incredibly beneficial and highly encouraged sustainability practice. Think about crushing old concrete on site to use as aggregate base for new pavement, or using excavated soil as backfill, or maybe salvaging timber from demolition to build landscape features on the same property.
Right, that happens a lot.
It does, and it's great. But importantly, that on-site reuse activity actually contributes to a different LEED credit, specifically MRc1. Building and materials reuse.
Okay, so it is rewarded just somewhere else in LE.
Exactly. The exclusion from the C&D waste diversion credit is simply to prevent projects from double dipping, counting the same reused material towards multiple credits. It ensures clarity and distinct objectives for each credit within the broader LEED framework, keeps the accounting clean and avoids confusion. And finally, excavated soil and land clearing debris are also typically excluded from these calculations.
Soil and trees, basically.
Pretty much. Excavated soil, unless contaminated, then it's hazardous waste, and things like tree stumps, brush, and other green waste from clearing the site.
Why exclude those?
Mainly because these materials are usually handled very differently and often in immense volumes compared to building waste. Projects typically have specific earthwork plans for managing excavated soil, trying to balance, cut, and fill on site to minimize hauling it off, or maybe sending excess clean soil for beneficial reuse, like grading other construction sites. Land clearing debris, the green waste, is often chipped for mulch, composted on or off-site, or sometimes used for biomass energy if local facilities allow. These fall into a different category of site development waste management.
So excluding them keeps this credit focused just on the building materials themselves.
Precisely. These exclusions streamline the focus of this specific C&D waste diversion credit, ensuring it precisely addresses the waste generated from the construction, demolition, or renovation of the building itself, without overlapping or complicating calculations for other important aspects of sustainable site development and overall materials reuse. It keeps the credit's focus sharp and actionable on the building waste streams.
Okay, that clarifies the scope perfectly. So with all these rules now laid out, the calculations, the consistency, the exclusions, the 100% and 200% values, the 35% cap, the 0% for ADC and incineration. How does a project actually earn points for their C&D waste diversion efforts under ADV5? I assume it comes down to hitting certain percentage thresholds. You mentioned Table 1 in the documentation.
Exactly. It all comes down to meeting specific thresholds outlined in Table 1 of the credit documentation. This table clearly lays out what a project needs to achieve to earn either 1 or 2 points for C&D waste diversion.
All right, so how does a project get that first point? What's the entry-level achievement look like?
To achieve 1 point under LEDV5 for construction and demolition waste diversion, a project must meet 2 distinct criteria simultaneously. It's not just one number. First, they must divert at least 50% of the total construction and demolition material generated by the project. This is that straightforward quantitative target based on either weight or volume consistently tracked. Half of everything needs to be kept out of landfills and incinerators.
Okay, 50% overall diversion. What's the second part?
The second part adds a crucial qualitative layer. A&D, at least 10% of the total diverted materials, must be materials that were either salvaged for reuse or source separated and sent to single material recycler.
Okay. So it's not just 50% total, but a chunk of that 50% has to be from those high-value streams.
Precisely. This is a great example of LEED's balanced approach. It's not just about the overall quantity diverted, the 50%, but specifically about the quality and the positive environmental impact of that diversion, the 10% high value.
So you can't just hit 50% by sending everything to a mediocre mixed C&D facility.
Exactly right. Even if that mixed facility has a verified rate above 50%, you also need to demonstrate that at least 10% of your diverted tonnage or volume came from those premium streams, the salvage items getting that 200% boost, or the clean source separated metals, wood, concrete, cardboard, etc., going to dedicated recyclers.
That makes sense. It ensures projects are actively engaging in more deliberate, more environmentally beneficial, and often more economically smart practices.
It does. It demands thoughtfulness and strategic planning beyond just hauling everything away commingled. It pushes for that extra effort in salvage and separation.
Okay, so that's 1 point. 50% total diversion, A&D, 10% of that diversion coming from salvage or source separation.
Yeah.
What about projects aiming higher? For the highest achievement, the full 2 points, what does that take? How much higher is the bar?
To earn the full 2 points, the bar is indeed set significantly higher, requiring a much more dedicated, comprehensive, and frankly, well-executed approach to waste management right from the project's outset. Again, there are 2 criteria that must be met. First, the overall diversion target jumps significantly. Projects must divert at least 75% of the total construction and demolition material.
Wow, 75%. 3/4 of all waste. That's substantial.
It is. It's a major undertaking on most projects, especially large or complex ones involving significant demolition. It requires really rigorous tracking and very careful management on site and with haulers. But again, just like for 1 point, it's not only about the total percentage. There's that critical qualitative component, and it becomes even more stringent for 2 points. The second requirement is A&D, at least 25% of the total diverted materials must be salvaged for reuse or source separated and sent to single material recycler.
Okay, so 75% total. A&D, a full quarter of that diverted material, has to be from those high-value premium streams.
Exactly. So a much larger proportion of your overall diversion strategy needs to be focused on those methods: direct reuse via salvage and clean source separation for efficient recycling, rather than relying too heavily on mixed C&D processing, even if it's verified.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture intentions we discussed, achieving 2 points seems like it would require a truly top-tier effort.
Oh, absolutely. Achieving 2 points requires a truly dedicated and meticulously executed materials management plan, fully integrated from the very beginning of design and planning. It really emphasizes maximizing both the overall diversion rate and the proportion of high-value materials that are either reused directly or cleanly recycled.
What are the challenges in getting there?
Well, the challenges often involve greater initial investment in planning time, potentially more intensive on-site labor for careful sorting and maybe even deconstruction activities, and needing to establish robust, sometimes long-term partnerships with a network of specialized recyclers and reuse facilities, which might not exist everywhere yet.
So it takes real commitment across the team.
It requires a huge collaborative effort across the entire project. Team, architects, engineers, contractors, subcontractors, waste haulers, even the client, everyone needs to be on board, working together with a shared, unwavering commitment to minimizing environmental impact and maximizing resource recovery.
But the rewards must be significant too.
The rewards are substantial. Projects hitting 2 points demonstrate a leading commitment to circular economy principles. They achieve significant reductions in embodied carbon associated with materials. They often create more of those local green jobs we talked about through their proactive material management strategies. It really signifies a project that has gone above and beyond the standard practice. It's a real mark of leadership.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of the point system. Before we wrap up our main discussion, the source document we looked at includes a specific note for core and shell only projects. Just to remind listeners, core and shell projects typically focus on the building's main structure, its envelope, so the roof and exterior walls, and its core systems like elevators, stairs, main mechanical shafts, basic restrooms. This is often done by the developer before individual tenants come in and customize their interior spaces. What's special about these types of projects in the context of C&D waste diversion? Is there a different rule?
There's not a different rule for their own construction waste, but there's an additional requirement related to future tenants. For core and shell projects pursuing this credit, the specific requirement is quite insightful. The building's approved construction and demolition waste management plan, the MMP that the base building project developed and followed, must be included in the tenant guidelines or lease agreements.
Ah, okay, so the plan they used has to be passed on to the people who will build at the inside later.
Exactly. It's a really clever addition, I think, because it acknowledges that a building's environmental performance doesn't just stop once the initial structure is complete and the core systems are installed by the developer. The tenant fit-outs are a huge part of the building's life cycle impact.
So why is that inclusion in the tenant guidelines considered so important? What's the thinking behind ensuring future tenants are aware of the base building's waste management approach? How does that contribute to the building's ongoing sustainability goals?
Yeah, it raises that important question about the long-term vision for sustainability within a building, right? It's really all about ensuring continuity. It's about setting clear expectations from the start and fostering a consistent culture of responsible resource management for the building's entire operational life, not just the initial construction phase.
Makes sense.
When individual tenants lease space in that core and shell building, they will inevitably undertake their own interior fit-out projects, customizing their offices, maybe building out a retail store, fitting out a restaurant, whatever it might be.
And those fit-outs generate a lot of waste, too.
They generate their own significant streams of construction and demolition waste. Think drywall cutoffs, carpet scraps, old fixtures being removed, packaging from new furniture, all sorts of things. So by including the original building's C&D waste management plan in the tenant guidelines or lease, it ensures that these future occupants, and importantly, their contractors doing the fit-out work, are immediately aware of the base building's overarching commitment to waste diversion.
So it extends the ethos.
It effectively extends the sustainability ethos of the initial construction right into the tenant spaces. Now, it's important to note, this may not strictly mandate tenant compliance within the specific base building out there. Credit tenant fit-out waste is usually considered separately, often under LEED for interior design and construction, LEED+C.
Right.
But what it does do is strongly encourage them to follow similar responsible practices. The guidelines might provide information on the building's preferred or approved recycling vendors, maybe outline required waste separation procedures within the building's loading dock or waste area, perhaps even make on-site infrastructure like shared recycling bins available specifically for tenant construction waste.
So it guides them and makes it easier.
Exactly. It guides them, makes it easier, and sets the expectation. It's about embedding sustainability thinking throughout the building's entire life cycle, fostering that collective culture of mindful material management for everyone who designs, builds, occupies, and eventually renovates the space. It ensures that the building's green principles are actively carried forward well beyond its initial certification plaque.
Wow. We have certainly covered a tremendous amount of ground today. It's been really insightful. We went from the really powerful intentions driving LEED E5's C&D waste diversion, encompassing that critical environmental protection piece, advocating for vital social equity, and fostering tangible economic opportunity, all the way through to the intricate methods of calculation, the different diversion strategies, those crucial percentage thresholds, and the specific requirements for earning points. It's truly a comprehensive and multi-layered approach to what many might just simply dismiss as waste.
Yeah, it really is. And what's truly fascinating when you dive into it is how LEED B5 meticulously cracks these requirements. It's not just about reducing the sheer volume of waste, though that's part of it. It's about strategically promoting the most impactful strategies, really prioritizing direct reuse through salvage with that 200% incentive, and strongly encouraging clean, efficient source circulation for high-quality recycling.
Right, pushing for quality over just quantity sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It reflects a really sophisticated understanding of material life cycles and their broader societal, economic, and environmental implications. It's pushing the industry beyond simple disposal towards true resource recovery and actual value creation. And, as you highlighted earlier, that explicit incorporation of the social justice aspect, specifically addressing the disproportionate impact of waste facilities on frontline communities, that truly elevates this credit beyond just technical specs. It really underscores LED's increasingly holistic approach to sustainability.
So what does this all mean for you, our listeners? Whether you're directly involved in construction or design, maybe policymaking, or perhaps just a curious individual with an interest in how our built world operates. Well, I think it's a powerful reminder that even what we casually label as waste can, and absolutely should, be viewed as a valuable resource. It shows that thoughtful planning, strategic action, implementing the right incentives, and collaboration can lead to incredibly significant environmental, social, and economic benefits, all bundled together. It really changes your perspective when you look at a demolition site, doesn't it? It's not just destruction. It's potentially an opportunity for a second, third, even fourth life for those materials, and a chance to build a better, more circular future. Which leads us to our provocative thought for today. If construction waste, with all its varied and complex material streams, concrete, wood, metal, drywall, plastics, insulation, if that can be so thoroughly analyzed, strategically managed, and transformed into a valuable resource and a powerful driver for green jobs, what other overlooked waste streams in our daily lives or in other industries might be ripe for similar innovative solutions and these kinds of deeper dives? Think about the things we maybe casually discard without a second thought: food waste, textiles, electronics, packaging. What potential value are we collectively missing there? And what new industries, new jobs, new solutions could emerge from fundamentally rethinking our relationship with waste across the board? Something to ponder. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. If you found this discussion insightful and you want to keep exploring the fascinating world of sustainable buildings, circular economies, and how we can collectively build a more responsible future, make sure to subscribe to the deep dive for more episodes just like this one. Thanks for tuning in.